Andy, were you a fan of the old Night Court
Oh
show, or
yeah.
even the new Night Court show?
I haven't even tried the new Night Court. I haven't even attempted to watch it. And from what I hear, I am probably making the right call there. But yeah, the old Night Court was legendary. I was young. You probably
Yeah.
shouldn't be watching it, but that applies to a lot of things I watched when I was young. That was a great show.
Yeah, Marky Post was one of my early crushes, you know. I think that was a real thing. Great overall show. Andy, I felt like I was in the real life Night Court this
Oh,
week. So about in the December timeframe, we were going up to get our Christmas tree, and I got a traffic citation. I was 22 over. I thought it was 70. It was really 60. It was a weird spot. Well, yada yada yada. It doesn't matter, right? So I have to, and the officer's like, "Hey, look, I could give you a ticket today, or you could just go to court and just get." And I'm thinking, "Oh, this is gonna be easy. I'm just gonna go there and say, yep, I did it. You know, can
put
I
it
just pay
down.
the fine?"
Yeah.
Nope. This is a whole process, Andy. So I go there, doesn't open till 8:30. I go there, the bailiff comes out and says, "Give me all your citations." And so we do, and then we go into this holding area where then once we wait for all the late stragglers to come, uh she's reading us the riot act. All the while I'm hearing these like I'm there for speeding. There's somebody there who may have a tag violation or something, or a title violation. Then there's people who are like on like third drug offenses, all sorts of, like, the cops were persecuting me. And I was just sleeping in my car, and they made, they wrote me up for this is my fifth time here. I hate this judge. I'm like, whoa, the fact that you know the judge is like probably a little more concerning thing. So, anyways, then the bailiff kind of reads us the riot act, the rules of the court. Hey, make sure your shirts are tucked in, or the judge will kick you out. Don't fall asleep, or he'll kick you out. Take your hats off, or he'll kick you out. And I'm like, who is this guy? This is
Good.
this is crazy. And so, but it's like high comedy too. Like sometimes I'm like, this can't be real, right? I mean, and so then we all stand and we walk single file into the court, and they said, do not talk in the courtroom. And I'm like, oh, this is
Don't
okay.
don't disrespect the judge.
So we go in there. The judge is behind a screen, like I don't know, like a plexiglass screen or whatever. And we literally row one by one into the pews or the courtroom seats or whatever. And then he proceeds to read us the riot act. And we're like, and I'm like, and he is like, what's the guy, like the Top Gun guy, Maverick, you screw up one time and you're, and God damn it, Maverick, those type that guy. Well, anyways, he proceeds to read a riot act, and I'm petrified of this guy. And I'm like, oh my God, this is serious. These guys are like and so luckily I was called up. Well, and so within, like he says, don't fall asleep in my courtroom. Within 2 minutes, somebody had fallen asleep. I can't make this stuff up. And he's like, get her out of here. Wake her up. Get her out of my courtroom. She's got to come back at another time. And he's like, if there's cell phones, if you have a cell phone, that'll be the last mistake you have here, because I'll send you down to the other court, and they're going to put you in the holding cell for 2 or 3 hours. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? This is out of control. And so anyways, I get called up the second one. So he's talking and so I feel like that episode of the Soup Nazi. you know
Yes, legendary
I
episode.
go he's like, you go to the left and I'll talk to this guy first. So I go to the left and my hands are crossed, and I'm like looking straight forward. He gets done reading this guy the riot act, because this guy was on his third marijuana offense or whatever. He's talking about how marijuana is going to ruin his life, and he'll go to jail, and if this judge sees him back in the courtroom, it'll be, for a lot longer, all this other stuff. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so. finally they call me over and I sidle up down the thing, and it's almost like, I'm passing my money to him and saying what type of soup I want. But he's like, what do you want to do? I was like, I'd like a reduction in speed. He's like, do you have a clean record? And I'm like, yes, sir. I mean, I felt like I was locked up in the army. So I get through this and I'm like, this, look, again, I was speeding. I don't deny that I was speeding, but now I've got to go through this whole rigmarole for a speeding offense. It's freaking crazy. Or my license gets suspended for one speeding ticket. It's crazy. So,
That is, Dave. I think one, that's the insanity of the courts. I hate the whole system. I think it's such garbage, and these guys get such inflated heads. It's like, look, you're a fucking judge. I don't care if you're a judge or a doctor or you're a lawyer or whatever job society has said is important. You're just another dude. You know what I mean? And these guys get so full of themselves and their authority. It drives me crazy. So I can empathize with the situation. I think there was a brief window in my life where I racked up quite a few speeding tickets prior to starting active duty and deploying overseas for a few years and getting my record cleaned up by virtue of not being in the United States. And I went to court a number of times, and I hated the experience every single time. I just thought it was such garbage. So, as much as I enjoyed your story, I'm sorry to endure that because it's garbage. It's such a BS system. And at the end of the day, you were driving your car a little bit quickly, probably no faster than that judge drove home that day.
Yeah, I think it is a little crazy, and I do feel like if that judge's take was just a little bit different, could he have had a different impact on those people? Maybe not. I don't know, but it was funny because, well, it wasn't funny. It was sad. It's like, I mean, the person next to me before when we were in the holding area was like, "Hey, this judge, like, if somebody does one thing wrong, it'll ruin it for the rest of us." And there's like 40 people there.
Yeah.
Like, and so everyone's like, "Hey, don't do anything wrong. Don't screw up here." It's just, I'm like, really, that's where we're at. Like, you're going to punish me because you woke up on the wrong side or you feel like you're on some crusade. But anyways, Andy, that was my fun story for the morning. So,
That is a fun morning. So I could tell you a much simpler. It's, I was also recently given a citation driving through your neighboring state in South Carolina as I was driving down to Florida. Super nice cop. Made it
yeah.
easy. He pulled me over. Can I get your license and registration? Gave it to him. Sometimes cops like to like drag out the ticket process for what seems like an eternity. Guy came right back. Was like, hey, you're going this fast. I dropped it to this fast. You can pay it online. Have a nice day. I paid my ticket that day or the next day. I was done with it. I
Yep.
mean, it was, I was going over. Shouldn't have been because I wasn't going that far over. But he did his job. I went about my day. No harm, no fouls. Thank you, state of South Carolina, for your professionalism. Thank you, Officer Sweat, for being professional in what you did. Personally, I don't know what your thoughts are. I think speed limit laws are garbage. I think they should all be faster on highways. I think they're deliberately low because it gives the states opportunities to get revenue. I think speed limits could easily be higher, closer to 80 miles per hour. And I think we should look at the German model of varied speeds and varied lanes, which is much more logical, and apply such things here domestically. There's a lot of improvement that could be made, but I think the system we have in place allows for a nice little bit of revenue for the states. And so they keep it the way it is. One day, Dave, when I am king of Virginia, I will change the driving laws here in the Commonwealth and put in higher speed limits and variable speed limits across lanes. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I don't disagree with you here, Andy. And as having lived in Germany for some time as a kid and then later in life, I know you've been there as well. And shout out to one of our loyal listeners who's in Germany right now. So like,
Right. That's right.
if he's out there, we're shouting you out. But I'm a fan of the German process as well. Why? Because they follow the rules,
Yeah,
right? Like if you're in the fast lane, you get in that's it. Like
that's right.
you pass and then you move over. Here we stay in this lane forever, and it just causes more problems. I agree. I think, look, I don't think there's a I think you should have a max speed, but I don't think we should be like where we're at. Like I was driving when we were going to Cleveland, 55. I mean, in some areas I'm like, are we serious? Like this is a real thing?
Yeah.
Like
And there's nothing around you. There's nothing in sight around you as you drive through parts of Ohio on that journey, right? It's yeah, it's terrible. We could easily go much faster than we do. And you're right, Germans respect the rules of the road because
yeah.
heaven forbid, I was there in a 1996 Chevy Blazer. Heaven forbid I stay in that left lane as some German or Italian sports vehicle is tearing down, blazing in the left lane. Like you just get out of the way.
Just
People
get
you
out
know,
of the way.
respected it.
Yeah, and that's where I think we just, yeah, that's where we can improve. Okay, Andy, we probably talked a little bit more about that thing, but our love of Germany is real for
Yeah.
more than just the speed. The food is so good over there.
Oh,
So,
so good, so good. Yeah, yeah, making me reminisce now. But yeah, we'll come back to
okay.
Germany another day because I want to talk about Glühwein and Christmas markets. But that's another story for another day.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
For sure, for sure. And the peanuts, Andy, like the roasted peanuts too, like and oh my.
Meats. I'm thinking about the Stockkrug now, and my favorite ice cream shop, the ice
So
cafe.
So we were in Berlin, and there was there's a famous restaurant there where they have the seat where Napoleon sat
Yeah,
when he was in Berlin and had dinner. They had a pork knuckle, or pig knuckle, or what. I love the German word for it, but I couldn't pronounce it for the life of me. But I love the German language because it literally is what it is. Like
yeah.
it translates exactly to what it is. Pig's knuckle is, yeah, anyways, but it was so good. I just could never get enough of it. All right, all right, all right. We keep going down the wrong path. Andy, we're going around the world in the next, for the rest of this podcast,
All right,
okay?
let's travel. Let's
So,
go.
so this is the quick around the world hits. We've got a lot of topics. I want to get your impressions on them, and then we're
Okay,
going to move on. We're not going to deliberate. We're not going to debate. I want your Gen X take on
ready,
this. Okay?
ready. Let's do it.
And we're talking controversies, Andy. We're talking controversies.
All right.
Okay. All right. So a new report about the COVID vaccine and
Yes.
COVID mandates having unintended consequences. And basically, I think the gist of this one, Andy, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. The gist of this one is in states that mandated the COVID vaccine versus states that did not mandate it, there was no real difference in the acceptance rates. And in fact, in some of those states, it actually led to lower the flu vaccine taking. Am I right there, Andy?
You're right. It also lowered measles vaccine intake, and I thought it was a very interesting report. Dave, not spent a lot of time on it. The title of the article from CIDRAP, the University of Minnesota's publication, is "COVID vaccine mandates may have had unintended consequences," researchers say. And as I looked at this, I thought you could easily replace COVID vaccine with government. And generally speaking, mandates have unintended consequences. That's just the reality. Well intended. I always sort of assume the best in these things. So I think these were well-intended mandates to try and help the health situation in a very difficult situation, right? I get that. But what typically happens when we force things on people is there are unintended consequences that we didn't plan for that later have difficult effects for the population. In this case, people were pissed off about the vaccines. They lost trust and confidence in the vaccines and the fact they were required. And so we saw a decrease in routine vaccine taking. And so people stopped taking the flu vaccine. People stopped getting the measles vaccine. We're seeing small outbreaks of measles now around the country in different spots. When we force people to do things that they don't want to do, partially just because of our rebellious nature as humans, I think, but also for other reasons, political reasons and others, it has unintended consequences. And that there's a really valuable lesson in that applies to all forced activity. So it's one of the reasons why, David, and I know we're not going to get into Andy's political theories today, but why, generally speaking, voluntary action is so much better than mandate. So it's an interesting study. I think there's a lot to pull out of it. It hasn't gotten a lot of attention, I think, because a lot of people don't want it to get a lot of attention. But I think it's a good article. Important notes in that. And I think the unintended consequences of well-intentioned actions is a story of government, and that's a challenge for us.
Yeah, and I think with anything now, everything's becomes politicized. So it's just a matter of time before somebody latches onto this report and says, "See, I told you." It supports my position that I've held for a long time, one way or the other. So yeah, there's no right way around that one, for sure. But yeah, definitely interested in studying. And again, this is why I encourage, reading beyond what your normal social media feed is. Like, look, educate yourself, learn more about what other people are saying, what the research shows. I mean, you don't have to dive 100% in, but educate yourself. Like,
Yeah.
learn more about the subject matter before you spout off on social media about some dumbass statement, or a waste statement. So, okay, Andy, next topic. Here we go. Are you ready?
Ready? Let's go.
Okay. Recently, a Texas judge rules that school district can restrict the length of male students' natural hair. This occurred in Texas, Andy, where on Thursday, the state's Crown Act, which is an act from within the state that says you can't discriminate based on somebody's natural hair. This judge ruled that the state's Crown Act does not make it unlawful for school dress codes to limit the student's hair length. It was a blow to a particular student who sued the independent school board in Barbers Hill after he was suspended for months over the length of his locks hairstyle. Andy, what are your thoughts on this? Is this overreach? Are we making more of this? I mean, this is a political statement or not? Where do we go with this one,
I
Andy?
mean, David, it's pretty remarkable story in 2024 that a school district, a public school district, is going to limit the length of an individual's hair, male or female. Like that's just to me, that's mind-boggling. And I don't know the background of the community. I don't know if this is religiously motivated, that men should only have certain length hair, or if this is ethnically motivated. The young man is a black youth who's saying that he's growing his dreads in part to acknowledge his heritage. So I'm not sure what the sort of driving, motivator behind it is. But to me, just like vaccine mandates, right? The audacity for a school district to tell a young man how long or short his hair needs to be is unbelievable here at the quarter century mark of the 21st millennium. That's just remarkable. So, it's sad to see these kinds of things. And, again, it's taking place in Texas, and we're seeing around the country, some greater enforcement of individuals' beliefs of, how we should conduct ourselves, not legally, but morally and behaviorally. And that's a concern. That's a concern, right? If you're going to start telling people how long they can wear their hair or tell them how they can dress, my wife and I were just sitting on the couch the other day talking about us being in interracial marriage and her coming from a long line of interracial marriages. I'm like, well, I mean, are there going to be counties and districts that decide that that's no longer authorized one day as well? To me, it's a concerning decision, regardless of sort of the origin of their opposition to this kid's hair. I've got a son with long hair. I think it looks great. I once, Dave, as you know, had long hair. I enjoyed it. The audacity for a public school system or county to say, "Hey, kid, you can only have hair of this length." To me, that's something right out of 1600 and has no place in the 21st century. I thought it was complete bullshit. A big fail for a state that I generally like, which is a great state of Texas.
Yeah, I get a little torn on some of this. Not, the fact on look, if you go to a private school, if you go to work for a business, there's dress codes, there's accepted dress codes. Public schools should have, reasonable dress codes as well. But when we're talking about hairstyle and things, the natural body, like what are we really arguing about here? Like let's make sure that, I mean, they're not doing certain things that are like, advocating for violence on their clothing and all this other stuff. Let's focus on that stuff. The hairstyle, I mean, come on, are we really serious? I mean, where are we getting into? And yes, Andy, what you talked about interracial marriage, banning and stuff like that. Look, I mean, I'd love to be able to just laugh you out of the room and say, Andy, we're far beyond that, but I don't know, are we? I mean, some days I really wonder if we're going to get to that level. So I do find this as an interesting story. It'll be interesting as we continue to watch it play out here, but very disappointing. I would agree with you as well.
Yep.
So all right, Andy, we're going to move to our next topic. This one's from the Hill. Fox News co-host surprised by GOP's threshold for humiliation in a Biden probe. So
Wow.
this is a Fox News co-host
Did you say
mocked.
that President Biden got probed? Did I hear you correctly?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Fox News co-host Jessica Tarval mocked House Republicans on Wednesday for the pursuit of impeachment charges against President Biden. The fact that we're like, this is again, we talked about this. The fact that they continue to pursue these impeachment trials to, because Trump was impeached and all this other stuff. Like, let's get off of it, guys. Like, govern the nation for crying out loud. And we continue to still not do this. But she continued to go on this, and basically this is about news from earlier in the week, Andy, about the FBI informant in some of the cases against Biden was actually appeared to be less than credible or has had some other challenging things in his behavior that makes this now almost like I can't laughable in some respects, Andy. So where do you think when you see this type of thing from Fox News, Andy? I'm kind of surprised. So
Yeah, it was so the co-host, Ms. Tarlov, is a Democratic strategist, right? So she's no friend of the GOP, but it is on Fox News, which does generally, lean towards Republicans and the conservative movement. So interesting that even there, she's got a voice, and a lot of people picked up on this comment because it's how most of America is looking at this absolute disaster of what Congress is doing. I mean, there have been so many hearings and things of that nature, regarding Biden's corruption. And listen, I'm no fan of Joe Biden. I'm definitely no fan of Ohio's Jim Jordan, not Ohio's favorite son. And she's right. I mean, the Republicans just are humiliating themselves in front of the nation because, like you said, Dave, like you said many times, they're not governing. They're just putting on theater, right? I mean, it's all for the purpose of embarrassing Biden and electing Trump. And then at the end of the day, it's all infighting, Republican versus Republican. Like I said, Joe Biden and Democrats aren't even in opposition. They're not even in the argument. It's just GOP against GOP. It's embarrassing. It's a disaster. So Ms. Tarlov, again, a Democrat saying these things, but on Fox News, when Fox News listeners are getting a chance to sort of maybe take a stance and reflect on, like, what the hell is our elected government doing right now? Why are we in cahoots with Russian, government and Russian informants? Like, maybe we're off track here, right? Maybe we're not quite doing the right thing. Even with Mr. Trump's recent comments, like not really being able to call out Putin for his recent actions in Russia, while the rest of the world is saying, "Hey, this is unacceptable," and Trump's just calling himself, like he's being hurt and comparing himself to a man that's been murdered. There's a lot of confusion going on, Dave. I thought these were good comments, on point comments, and people are picking up and running with them as they should.
yeah, I find these very interesting. I mean, you hit on all the right points there, and it's just amazing that this is again the state of politics where we're at today. We're not governing. We're not doing what we were told to do. Somebody had an interesting comment the other day that another podcast I was listening to is, and I've even seen some news about this recently about the concern from the founding fathers about demagogues and concerns about individuals who are seeking power for the sake of their own power and not for the people. And I find that fascinating because that's exactly where we are. Like government, like these candidates are more about celebrity. And you go back to Obama. I mean, Obama was he was a celebrity for lack of a better term in the beginning. Now, look, he governed, and I think he did a fine job. I think there were some things I liked, some things I didn't like. But he was a celebrity for all intents and purposes, especially, I mean, do you remember the crowds that he was getting in Chicago, overseas, in those big, yeah, I mean, it was like must see, and everyone wanted to be inspired by this hope that he was doing. And now we've got real celebrity in Donald Trump, who is on TV. I mean, it's. I think when we're now more focused on celebrity versus actual what they stand for the issues, I think that's where we have a lot of concern, and that's where I have concern moving forward because I don't think anybody is really ever talking about the issues anymore. We're more attacking people's character. We're more attacking people's their outside extracurricular activities. Anyways, okay, Andy, a couple more to try to get through.
All right.
Most voters say Biden, Trump, both mentally unfit for second term. This is about American voters are being skeptical that Joe Biden is mentally fit to serve a second term, and most do not think his rival Donald Trump is mentally fit either. That's from a Quinnipiac. I can't never pronounce that.
Quinnipiac.
Um,
Quinnipiac.
yeah, however that goes. That was published earlier this week. 64% of respondents said Biden was mentally unfit for another term, which is a bleak point. 51% of voters said that Trump is not mentally fit as well. I'm sure people will argue, well, 64 is greater than 51, so therefore Trump is better off here. We should vote for Trump. What do you think, Andy?
Dave, I'll tell you what I think. I am shocked by those numbers because I think they're remarkably low, to be honest. I'm
Yeah,
amazed
I
that
agree. Yeah.
more Americans don't think that they're both unfit. I mean, I'll be honest, 51% for Trump is remarkably good. I would expect that to be much higher. The reality is, Americans are right. They are both mentally unfit. They're both unhealthy. They're both well past their prime. They should not be in the White House. We've talked about this many times. The sad thing is, even though America knows it, America
or
is
some of
keeping
them.
the choice of these two clowns, for the White House. So, Dave, like many things in these United States, we know what right and wrong looks like. We choose wrong, and that's a problem. So, America's got it right. I'm surprised the numbers aren't higher.
Yeah, yeah, it's a sad point. Andy, we've been hitting on this for months. I
Yeah,
think since the beginning of the podcast, and we'll continue to hit on it because they're both fucking idiots.
yep.
They're both awful. And so, but that's where we're at. I am going to be interested though, Andy, is could we see some convention surprise? Look, I mean, everyone says Haley is committed to staying in.
Yeah,
I think she's committed to just like saying, hey, Trump's legal issues are going to be too much,
yeah.
and maybe I'll be there. So that's one part. And the other part is, are Democrats going to press the panic button and say, look, I'm sorry, Biden, it's time to step aside. We're going to do it for you because you're not capable of doing it for us. Just the question is who then on the Democrat side? Everyone goes Gavin Newsom, but there's Kamala Harris,
Yeah.
who's been vague. She's been absent from everything for the last 2 to 3 years, I think. Then there's like Pete Buttigieg and some of these other people. Like, hey, he actually ran a decent campaign. He just wasn't a big enough guy at the beginning. Uh, I don't know. What do you think about an election surprise or a convention surprise, Andy?
So I don't think Democrats will do anything as long as Trump is the opposition, right? And that's kind of Biden's, his whole sort of argument for himself since his first election, right? Was I'm going to stop Donald Trump, right? I'm saving America from Donald Trump, which maybe he did, maybe he did last time around. But I think you're right about Nikki Haley. I think she's sticking around. She's getting funding, right? And the reality is, as Trump's legal woes pile up, and it can get worse, and there are a lot of things can happen in the next few months, he may not be able to effectively run for president. And some of his support may actually drop off beyond his extremely dedicated base. There could be an opening for something to happen where she ends up being the nominee. It's possible, unlikely, but possible. And if she ends up being the nominee, would the Democrats then say, okay, well, to them the threat of Donald Trump is gone. Maybe we don't need Joe Biden. Let's put somebody else up on the stage. Like I think it's possible. I could see Joe Biden maybe saying, "Hey, I've done my job. Trump is defeated. I'm going to step down." And somebody like I think it's very unlikely, but possible. And I'll tell you, Gavin Newsom has been a terrible governor for the state of California. I've complained many times about you can't do business in California. They waste a lot of money in California. The guy's an arrogant hypocrite. He'd be a terrible, terrible president. Democrats could very likely elect him because they've elected many worse people. Pete Buttigieg, I'll tell you, Dave, when he ran, I really looked at all the candidates in the last run. I really try to have an open mind and look at people that I wouldn't initially, think I agree with. And I like Pete at many levels. He pissed me off because he went on some remarks about connecting shootings and gun violence, and sort of the way he took it was really sleazy to me, and I didn't like it. I didn't like the way he did it. But as a character in and of himself, I think he's a nice guy. I think he's a smart guy. He's a likable guy. He'd probably be a decent president, to be honest with you. He's a thoughtful individual. I don't know that I would agree with him on everything. I think politically we have very different opinions. But considering what's out there, like he's not a bad choice of Democrats if they were to make a switch. I think he could be interesting. But again, I don't agree with him on most political matters in and of themselves. But it would be wonderful to see a new generation, even if they skipped over our Generation X, Dave, and jumped straight to young millennial Pete Buttigieg. Yeah, I'd be open to something new, somebody that's not crawling around, straight out of the crypt.
Yep, there you go. I definitely would be interested in. I would give it my full attention if something were to change from these two. I would give them my full attention.
Yeah.
All right, Andy, we're nearing the end of the podcast. We have a lot more, but I'm just going to lump them into one here, Andy,
All
and
right.
just get your quick hits on this. A lot of the takes this week, Biden throwing out one. They're trying to show how strong Biden is by having him curse more. I think that's a unique approach because if that's the case, I'd fucking swear all the fucking time and I wouldn't give a shit about what other people said. Apologize for the pansies out there who are thinking that I can't swear on my own fucking podcast. But that's neither here nor there, Andy. My point is this: Biden is taking on Russia, and then he's also comparing and calling Putin names, which we can never call Putin enough names. But he's also comparing Republicans and saying, look, they're worse than Strom Thurmond. And so, like I think you even had said it to me before, when you're putting Strom Thurmond in a better light with regards to his policies on how he dealt with race, I think that's a pretty tough bill. What are your thoughts on Biden's outspoken comments this week against the GOP and Putin?
Yeah, so listen, as a young kid, I got interested in politics. And when Joe Biden ran back in the 80s, I liked him. There's something about the guy that I liked as a character, and I still like him as a character. I think he's old and he's crazy, but when he puts on his tough guy nonsense, he's actually fun to watch, right? So when he's willing, like you said before, Dave, the shut up man, but Joe Cool kind of like it's entertaining and it's goofy and it's likable. I appreciate the fact that he's willing to call Putin a son of a bitch. He is a son of a bitch, right? He's a bastard. He's a piece of crap. He's an awful leader. I'm glad that he's got the balls to call him out. And then again, in comparison to his opponent, Donald Trump, who's kissing the ring and licking the shoes of Putin, it makes no sense. So I think it's a good move for Biden to say, look, I'm willing to say it. I'm willing to say what the world knows. I don't have to appease this guy. I'm not scared of him. I'm gonna say, I think it's a good move. And talking tougher towards Republicans when they're doing things that are concerning, right? I mean, the fact you can even potentially equate Strom Thurmond, who, despite Joe Biden having some nice words for the guy, was an old racist SOB himself, right? And you're putting him, on par, the Republicans on par with some of his old beliefs. That's a concern, and that's an association you don't want to have as a political party, right? But some things we're seeing and hearing make that comparison possible and not completely off the wall. Tough guy Joe Biden's fun to watch. I enjoy watching him. He's a goof, and it's funnier now that he's gotten older. If he can do that during the debates, he'll have a chance, to actually stand up and look interesting if they even debate, Dave. We'll see if that even happens. But I like tough guy Joe.
Yeah, my bet is they don't debate, but that is that'll be interesting to see. All right, Andy, we covered a lot of ground when we going around the world here. What are your final thoughts for the week? Anything?
If you've obliterated my mind in these 30 minutes, so not much. I'll say is Eminem dropped some thoughts, I think, yesterday, talking about sort of the former president Donald Trump and how he uses his supporters, how he doesn't really care about them. A lot of people gave Eminem grief about it. I agree. I thought Eminem hit it right. I thought he made some good remarks. I think he's being honest that Donald Trump doesn't care about his supporters. He manipulates people. He uses people. Everything the guy does is about Donald Trump, and I think I wish his fan base would recognize that because he does not give a crap about the people that support him or those that are donating to his GoFundMe account for his pretty sneakers and legal woes. So, David, I think I can only wrap up there. I'm just hoping that some new music comes out today to save me and decrease my tension because you got me worked up too early in the morning today.
I apologize for that, Andy. But Andy, just so you know, it's over $1 million now that people have supported the GoFundMe thing. And Andy, look, I'm not a huge Eminem fan. I think I don't particularly like his music, but whatever, it doesn't matter. I wish more people would come out and say these things. I mean, I would look, I mean, whether you want he's not wrong at all, and we've been saying that. So, all right, Andy. That'll wrap up this week. Really, a lot of stuff we got through this week, but I look forward to catching up with you next time, Andy.